Hello everyone, my name is Noah Byer. I am a cinematographer and director, most known for my work on the Red Hood Resurrection series. Today I wanted to do a breakdown on the most recent thing I released, which is our Becoming Robin short film. This was a lot of fun to make and some of my favorite cinematics that I was able to produce. I wanted to make this video to show that you don't need a ton of gear to make something that looks great. Working with no crew can be pretty challenging, but it's not impossible. For the majority of this film, it was just myself and the actor, and I was able to produce some really great shots. And so let's break that down scene by scene and talk through how I did it. So the first two shots that you see are shots of a city with a drone. Now, I licensed these videos because I don't live in a city that looks like Gotham, which is what I needed. This is the only instance of stock footage I use really ever, is establishing shots, but it helps portray the story and location much more accurately into what I'm hoping to achieve. So now we've zoomed in and we are clearly in an actual location now, in an alleyway. So as you can see in most shots, it's just backlighting. We're getting a nice flare through these anamorphics that I use, the Bizarre Remus, and they give a lot of character. And that's part of the beauty of these shots, is the character of the lens. And I'll touch back on that later. You'll hear it a million times if you're learning cinematography, but backlighting really is your best friend. One thing that I commonly do when I'm trying to shoot city scenes is I will take a C-stand and I will raise it up really high and have this backlight hitting down to illuminate the scene and appear more like a street light. So that's what I did here, and the only other light I had was a really small one, about 60 watts, just as a fill that I would bounce off the walls or move as I needed per shot. This is my formula for the majority of shots I get. I'm used to working with a small crew, having somebody adjust minimally or myself adjusting minimally. So it can be kind of challenging, but again, it works. So as we can see here, we've got our henchmen and they're really being backlit. They're a little bit closer to the light now. So it's really highlighting their face, and I have bounced this light off the wall, just off frame. Thankfully, the walls were kind of like a cream color, so it made a really nice bounce, and so with a small powered light, it really took it much further. This light was undiffused, it was just an LED panel, and so I bounced it off the wall to create a nice soft glow on the faces of these characters, and you can really see it here in this shot where it's hitting, and it just, you know, looks like another light that is coming from further down the alley. We never see over there, so it's a lot easier to hide. For the most part, I was just on this one plane, and that was great. The other nice thing about this was there were these practical lights that were just in the background, that created another nice piece of contrast. It doesn't particularly fit the grittiness of an alleyway that I wanted. However, it still adds to the scene, especially with the character of these lens, seeing the distortion. It's really nice. All right, so right here, same thing. This harsh light backlighting is just giving a nice pop. If this were not here, we would lose kind of this side of his face, his hair. It would just be a lot less visually interesting. And right here, we would just, you know, all of this would look dark. So backlight. Alrighty, now for this scene with the cop lights, I kicked away my fill light, so you can see it's a little bit more contrasty here on these thugs' faces. So I was just solely relying on that harsh light. I didn't want to move it. I kind of liked the way it looked visually. It's not the prettiest, but it works. We've already established the lights coming from there. I would have kept another fill light here if I had it, but shooting up against a white wall, it's kind of tricky. So honestly, having the shadows from these characters helps. Sometimes things work out for the better. You never know. The only thing that I think would have helped a little bit more would be maybe a top light, to kind of hit more down and create a little bit more contrast, but this still works. Now for the police lights turning, that same strip I had, it is RGB lighting, and so on the light stand, I had someone time it just off camera. Obviously all the sounds were added in after the fact, but I turned on this cop light effect on the RGB light. I just had them twist it so that as the scene progresses, it comes in the middle of the scene. Super simple, very effective. All right, so now we are moving scenes again. I'm going to move through all of these bedroom scenes I did. Same concept for everything. However, I shifted a little bit each time to create some variation and to also establish better time of day and things like that. So we've got Johan here. He is laying in the bed. And what I did is I have a mirror, and to create a little bit more depth to make the room seem larger, off to the side of the bed, I shot the light into a mirror on the other side of the bed, which then bounced back and illuminated the scene and created this nice glow and made the room seem a little bit larger, creating more space between the light source and the subject. For this specific shot, I didn't do any modifications with the actual spotlight. The only thing I did was make the light a little bit warmer to kind of simulate that it is morning. Just off camera right, I also had a bounce light. Just a nice corner bounce to help fill out the scene and really make it soft. Everything looks bright, happy, and I really wanted to communicate that because the start of this starts off on a high note, and we see that visually. So we jump forward in time. Same lighting setup, just a few different things. Rather than changing the color temperature of my lighting, I changed the color temperature of my camera. So back here, this little kick of light is actual light coming through the bathroom window. I could have made the light cooler overall, but dealing with this, I didn't want to have to put up a gel or anything like that. So it was easier to just change the color temperature of the camera and bring that down. Of course, I'm shooting in log, so I can do it after the fact, but I like having a reference when I know it will be nighttime. I did the same thing for a day for night that I do in some other video works. And it's just easier for me to see while I'm actually shooting. Now, my spotlight has a slot to put in some different filter attachments. And so for this one, I did the blind attachment. It's really quick, but it casts some nice texture in the scene, creating kind of pockets of lighting. And I adjusted it so that it illuminated on his face and kind of helps glow some other stuff. Again, it's very quick, but you see highlights of this book like slow productivity to emphasize that he's trying. And we see here, same thing, just a different angle. We're getting a nice glow illuminating his face while the rest of this is kind of off in the shadows. And also for this shot, I lost that fill light in the corner. So we're getting a lot more contrast, and the only light source is the moonlight. And if you didn't catch up on this, hidden details, got schoolwork. We've also got a little Robin comic to kind of show his desire. It's subtle and it's kind of fourth wall breaking, but it helps show the character's desire to embody this role. And it's fun. Putting in Easter eggs is one of my favorite things to do. All right, and this is the last bedroom scene. I didn't quite go as strong with the moonlight. I wanted it to seem as though he slept through, and it's kind of like midday and the curtains are kind of closed, but the other colors going on really help emphasize the darkness overall. It's still on the bluer side, and I put the attachment of a fully open window, and so it's just the 4 pockets of light coming through. So there is a little bit of light texture. You don't super see it in here, but it's helping kind of cut off and emphasize the subject. So the outdoor elements were something that I knew we needed to hit well. I was familiar with the location and I knew I wanted to shoot there. The location was gorgeous, right near an airfield, got these nice kind of boardwalk vibes, right by the water, really, really visually interesting. So I knew I wanted to shoot there, and so we got up early to get the sunrise. There were so many great shots from this that I wasn't able to include. The majority of the things that I've shot thus far have been controlled lighting environments and using physical lights rather than just relying on practical. So shooting in daylight was honestly super fun. I was really looking forward to it. Another interesting thing about this is I like to storyboard a lot. I storyboard most things and I like to plan out to know pretty much what I'm getting myself into. If you don't already, I would seriously encourage you to do that. It really, really helps. But for this short, we were in the middle of shooting a primary episode amongst this. And so this one, I didn't have as much prep time to get to it since I had other focuses. So I'm really glad it turned out great. I felt confident, but it's a little bit stressful going in blind almost. For this shot, I rode my one wheel and just followed Johan to get a nice smooth ride behind him. So it was a little scary, kind of having a narrow path, while also just looking down at the camera and hoping for the best. Fun fact, this is my cameo and the project. This right here, that's me. And my good friend Sam, who's also the thug at the beginning of the episode. We're working with a small crew, so we have to recycle people a lot. Sometimes you just have to hope that things work out, and thankfully I've been very blessed to just kind of have things work out in my favor. So this is a school nearby, and I knew we were just going to shoot there quick, but we didn't really have extras. I had planned for some other, and it fell through. So I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And it just so happened to work out that a group of younger adults were just hanging out nearby at the record shop. And I was like, hey, do you want to be in this? And so they said yes. And so it worked out great. We had actual people, high school aged, in the project. You will learn over time that as much things as you want to have in your control, it doesn't always work out that way. The willingness and ability to adapt quickly in different circumstances can honestly make or break your project. So this was really fun. I knew we wanted to showcase that Tim was in high school at the beginning of this, and we later show that he's graduated, showing a quick progression of time through this montage. I reached out to the superintendent of the school that I attended growing up and just asked if we could film there. So they said yes, and I had a point of contact. A former teacher helped me get actual high school students that attend the school. It was really fun to go back to my old stomping grounds and kind of walk the halls and shoot this, what I'm doing now, back where I came from. David, the star of our primary series, was also there to help out. He wanted to see the process and stuff like this. So I put them to work, and in the midst of this shot of Tim walking down the hallway, he had my key light on a rolling C-stand and was walking in tandem with Tim to keep him illuminated and a little bit brighter than the rest of the environment. All of this workout stuff in this gym, same thing. I literally only brought one light for this. Again, harsh backlight really helps sell that kind of grittiness, and it looks great, especially with the white, all white and black environment. It really makes a nice pop of contrast. Now we went to this shot of Tim looking in the mirror in the gym. I switched it to a softbox to be a little bit more delicate with the sort of intimate shot that is on screen. It's very much kind of second nature now to know when to make these calls. Again, this was all just on the fly, but I knew that I wanted to communicate a little bit more vulnerability. Now, if the light stayed harsh in this scene, it wouldn't have felt the same. It would have looked worse visually, but also subconsciously, there are emotions when it comes to visuals and cinematics. So always being on the lookout on how you can communicate better through the visual medium, it does a lot. All right, so now we are in the Batcave. For the primary series, I built an actual Batcave and used a large monitor as the display, my TV. And I did not want to rebuild the Batcave because it was a very extensive process, but I wanted to show Tim within the Batcave. So all that we did here is same thing. I recreated the same lighting I had in the actual Batcave setup, which consists of a nice soft light just being diffused and being cast right above. But here I wanted very contrasty. So I did a lot of micro adjustments. Before, when I was first starting out, I would be afraid to stop and adjust. But trust me, unless you're like super, super, super out of time and you do not have time to afford it, you will thank yourself if you see something that might be slightly better, stop. There are so many times and so many shots where things could have been slightly different, but I didn't stop, A, because I wasn't confident enough in my own abilities. It can be kind of threatening when you're working with professional actors. Trust me, get more confident in your skills and your eye to know what is worth it and what isn't. At this point in the story, we are seeing that Tim has taken a turn into his downward spiral. Top-down lighting obviously is going to convey something from the start, but right here, we are seeing Tim almost entirely silhouetted. We're feeling very distant, and it makes him seem very cold. The visuals match with the story, and that's so important. But this was so simple. If his face was a little bit brighter, it would still look good, but it wouldn't feel as emotionally driven. Again, always be on the lookout to see how your visuals can tell the story better. I mostly use practical light for the majority of these shots within the montage, pretty much all the exteriors, but there were a few moments where I used a bounce to bring more light into the scene because I didn't want it totally dark. A bounce can seriously have so much impact. If you're running low budget and are planning on doing a lot of outdoor scenes, get a bounce. This day was very, very bright and sunny, and it was tricky. I brought lights, but the sun was too powerful. My lights weren't powerful enough because I don't have crazy expensive lighting or a budget to rent them. So using this little bounce light right here just filled in the foreground enough to be able to accurately see what was happening and create a nice glow on the character's face. I wanted this to be backlit. I wanted to show that he's kind of hiding from the world right now. And so hoodie up, backlit, but still seeing the character. All right, now we have moved on to this stuff, another night scene. So what we've got here, as you can see just in the background, got a pop of light. So just off frame here, I had same thing, C-stand raised up all the way to max height, light turned up to be street light. We're glowing here. This glow is mostly practical lights that were already there, but I'm emphasizing with some of my own lighting. And then here I've just got, again, small undiffused strip light. It does enough. We're in an alley. Things are dark. Things are contrasty. You don't want it to look pretty. You don't want it to look inauthentic, which is the problem in a lot of common media, is everything looks a little bit too intentional, which is great. However, it can almost detach you from the story. I mean, look at this. We're seeing a pop of contrast here. This isn't backlit particularly, but there's enough distance and contrast here to create what is essentially almost entirely shadowed. It's still being contrasted. And this is one thing I'm always looking out for composition as well. You know, for the most part, you want to stick to the rule of thirds. In doing this, you're also looking to do light composition. Work with what you have, make what you have work within the frame. Now here, that small practical light was backlighting. It's not the prettiest lighting, but it was established. It was literally just me in terms of crew at this point in time, so I had to roll with it. All right, and here we're catching that last bit of light bouncing off the wall from that high undiffused light, and then we are getting that direct light creating a pop of color, and the contrast and shadows are what I really also wanted for this character. And the nice part is you don't want to entirely lose the eyes, so they're dark for the most part, but that spotlight I have in the distance is creating just enough pop for an eye light to not entirely lose the eyes, which is something you want to do, is make sure the character's eyes are lit unless you're wanting them totally in the dark. So this was another instance of the perk of shooting in a small town. I just called this place ahead of time and asked if we could film there. They were very kind to let us, but we had a short window. They were operating, and so we had to work around a lot. There were some slot machines and things like that where people were just off camera and we couldn't show that. There were 0 lights brought into this gas station. I didn't want to infiltrate the space, and so I was, kind of unsure about what it would look like in here, but thankfully the visuals in this actually looked great to show kind of a grungy aesthetic, and what would be like a convenience store within Gotham. So it worked out perfectly. Same for right here. Thankfully, the register was right up next to the doors and some windows, so we were getting some fill light. They were kind enough to let me behind the counter. Because it was the windows exceeded off to the left of frame, it kind of gave a nice fill. Right above the checkout counter, there was another tube light. So we're getting this nice hair light. I didn't light any of this, but if I were to, I would want it to look like this. Natural lighting is a great tool. It's always nice to have gear, but I'm the biggest advocate for, if you have natural light, use it. Now here, I was working with just natural light again. I used my pop-up. It's like a 6-in-1 kit or something like that. And it's got silver and gold bounce. And then it's a scrim, so it's, it will work as diffusion. But then it's got a black and white cover as well. So for here, I used the black side to create some shadows here. So the inverse, I'm taking away lighting now. The lighting was a little bit harsher. It wasn't directly overhead, but both sides of this alley were white, and so I wasn't getting enough contrast. Especially, I wanted the primary character to look really rough here. And so that helped sell it. I took the lighting away, and it worked great. We're getting some more contrast here. So having those emphasized shadows really, really helps isolate the subject against this bright background. So this was so fun. We went on top of a parking garage. There was a skywalk in the background, and it really helped sell the fact that Robin is like on a skyscraper. So I brought my leaf blower. I had my friend Joel, who also played Victor Zaz, hold the leaf blower on my cue, and he was just off camera. I brought 2 small lights here. I've got a small tube light just below Robin here to create a nice face light to separate him from the background just a little bit. Again, I didn't want it to feel overly produced. It wouldn't make sense for lighting to be coming from the side here if he's on top of a building. You're just getting moonlight and whatever light is coming from the buildings. So I've got one here, and then just off the background to be sure that we were getting some more, especially with this cape flapping. I wanted to make sure that you would see those ripples. Those 2 small lights paired with the leaf blower really helped separate Robin from the background, and it looks awesome. It's one of my favorite shots I've ever gotten. All right, now we were here in a parking garage. I went and I had to pivot again because there was 0 power in this parking garage. My primary lighting I use, again, operates off V-mount, so I am so thankful that I invested in this light. So I put a smaller light on another C-stand to bounce. So that was just off here to create some fill off to the side. So this light in the back, you'll see it now in this frame. It was just illuminating the space, creating some nice backlight. There were these pillars that went across. It caught light on those, so it just helped create more background interest. And then you'll see here with a smaller light, I had more diffusion, just kind of filling to create a little bit more pop for the primary subject in this frame. My hope was to have this top-down lighting dispersing, but it really worked to sell the grittiness and contrast of the space by just having this one primary light source illuminating everything, and we've got these long shadows. So it created a cool thing despite not being what I originally planned for. And that side light, there were some more practical lights coming through. This was an actual street light, but that side light hitting Robin and then just a little pop off to the side here. The contrast, it very much gives me the scene from the Batman where he's just there from the shadows and just barely illuminated. I love that we were kind of able to make a parallel in this shot. For the most part, that was the entirety of the lighting setup for this. I kept this light here and just turned it depending on the shot as needed. As you'll see, it doesn't cover the entire range of the parking garage, so I just twisted it as needed for where they were at spatially. You'll see we pivot to being lit over here by the end of this scene, and it's in the dark right now. So minor stuff that I just had to adjust slightly, but it's no big deal. It all happens so fast, the audience isn't going to pick up on that. Now, the fun part about editing is getting to make choices after the fact, and this was one of those. I held onto this shot. It's almost a 30-second shot, but this is his realization moment. Like, we are unsure, and we are sitting in real time with Tim as he's visualizing and thinking about his actions. Fun fact, I didn't have a photo of the young boy that is in this, Drew. And so this is a green screen photo that I printed out the day of with trackers. And so this is tracked on after the fact. And it was a pain in the ass to try and get this to look real. I spent so many hours that I probably could have saved if I had a photo, but it's fine. Hopefully nobody noticed. That was the goal. But that's the kind of things that you have to do. One of those, we'll fix it in post, that you hate yourself for later. All right, and the last thing I'm going to be tackling right now is the lighting for this. Again, same thing as earlier with just a bounce. We are backlit by the sun right here, and right here I've just got my bounce diffusion silver to create a kind of nice cool glow that matches the scene. And it works too because right before this we show that there's a pool, so it's establishing that there might be some light bouncing off, reflecting, and it looks really nice having this kind of contrast in the middle of his face, being backlit and then getting this bounce to still backlight the side of his face. It's really nice. It looks great. And again, zero lighting was used for this. It is just manipulated sunlight. So I hope you enjoyed this breakdown on the cinematography of Becoming Robin. It is one of my favorite things that I've produced visually. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. If you're interested in more things like this of me breaking down low budget, small crew video work, follow along for the ride. I've got a Patreon that I will link down below, and you can click the card up here. It's a lot of fun. I try to make my resources and discussion posts available for the majority of people. It's also a way to support me as a creator so I can continue to devote more time to things like this and to create more content and projects that hopefully you will watch and enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Noah Vire. I'll see you in the next one.